So oftentimes a want will feel really indulgent in view of what we've been talking about, uh, right? So when times are tough, when you need to be tough, and all of a sudden, you're like you're just having difficulty putting food on the table, and just surviving, and your child is looking for some affection, then you'll want the child to also be tough, and you will feel like you can't afford to be anything but tough. You'll feel like, if I'm not tough right now, if I show affection and I become weak, then I may not be able to keep on going, right? And so uh, showing affection might feel like a weakness, and more importantly, it might actually really feel indulgent in the sense that this is not something you can afford, and so we'll brush the child aside. It's like, hey, I don't have time for that. Not because we don't feel it. Actually, we hurt deep inside when we brush the child aside. But at the same time, we feel like if we don't do that, we won't raise the child to have a sense of reality of, we want to prepare the child, a sense of reality for what the child will be facing in real life and things like that. And so we don't realize actually that that might be a very critical necessity to give the child something extra. And so if we understand that what we call wants are actually something that's above, typically what's above the second rung, such as like in the relationship I was just explaining about, then we can actually see that one step above that, which is the rung of esteem, is where you're successful and you're doing things. And I was talking to a friend of mine once who was struggling to get a car, and this friend had worked really hard and finally got to a place where financially they could afford a better car. They wanted this car, but they were like, oh, I'm being indulgent, I don't need this car. And it was really interesting. My friend eventually decided to go and get this car, and we were talking later, and I was like, so what up? And he was like, do you like the car? Like, do you have any risks? I was like, no, actually, I didn't realize this, but once I got the car, I'm on the road so often. I didn't realize what a difference it made in terms of my rest, my ability to connect with my family when I get back home. Just being able to find more comfort, having more energy. I could do my job better. And so I'm really glad I got the car. And so one of the key things that you find is that as you get into the esteem rung, where you're trying to really perform, you start actually getting things that are a lot more indulgent compared to even below that rung. So belonging rung, being affectionate to your family and things like that, you don't need to spend any money for that. So indulgence really comes with actually starting to spend more money, if you will. And there's some money, like going out to eat or getting something nice for the family, like let's say for instance you couldn't afford, but like getting some expensive like meat, like such a steak or something like that you really can afford, just that you can kind of like have a party for the family, or whatever it is, like when you don't have enough, or maybe just getting a cake, or maybe just a cupcake with a candle on it for the whole family to share, because you can actually get that, can feel very indulgent, whatever that is. But up to the belonging rung, you could actually just do with little things. Like if you don't have anything, maybe finding some paper, some scrap paper, and making origami and just saying, hey, I made you this. And so it could be done with no money. But sometimes even emotions, like positive emotions, can feel indulgent, right? And that's a really extreme case. And so, but I would say that the sense of indulgence really starts with the esteem rung, because at the esteem rung, you start doing things that are more luxurious, because people don't realize that actually oftentimes what we correlate with luxury or more comfort actually has to do with performance and energy and things like that. They really help. And so like say for instance, if you are starting to be successful at your work and you want to work harder and more, and you don't have as much time, and you want to hire someone to actually clean your house, then all of a sudden, like, that feels like a luxury because you used to do it. And what we don't realize is that, or do people oftentimes what people don't realize is that actually you can actually funnel the extra money that you're making from working hard, and actually provide more economic freedom for someone else by actually providing them with a job. And that it's actually not luxurious, but it's actually a way you can be more responsible for just someone beyond yourself. But that level of thinking, to think beyond you, where you're not wasting, but you're actually, you know, providing service for society while also bringing more freedom for yourself, that is actually a higher level of thinking. And you need to go. And so not only are you thinking of your immediate family and the relationships that are close to you, at the esteem rung, you start thinking beyond the people that are close to you. You are responsible for society. When you work, what you put out into the work at your work makes a difference to the people that you serve, and you start becoming an important member of society through your hard work and things like that. And so what I've observed is that starting with the esteem rung is where really the sense of oh, am I being indulgent, am I being wasteful, really starts. And I feel like what's really important to understand about our wants is that it is a little bit indulgent because it's something you didn't do before, and it feels really vulnerable. It feels really vulnerable. And all these instances that I talked about, it feels really vulnerable. And the reason is because it's not something you needed in the previous rung. So it feels, one, wasteful, and the other thing is that or indulgent because you don't need it, and then it feels wasteful also because you're spending more or you're doing more than you were doing before that actually might compromise the previous rung you're working on. So let's say, for instance, you're like really working on the system, being disciplined. When you're disciplined, you need a certain sense of kind of like, just, okay, I gotta just get down with it. I need to grind it. There's a certain level of willpower and things like that to just make it happen. And softening your emotions and being vulnerable might seem like a real hazard, if you will, to that mentality of, I just gotta do it. Which it's not. In reality, it's not. Vulnerability is the source of all power, which I'll get to later because, it correlates to need. Vulnerability actually correlates to all of the needs. But a deeper subject later. So having said that, and then you're at the belonging rung, and then your security rung gets a little bit better. You start having a little bit more room. You start being able to have a little bit more capacity to kind of look at how the relationship's going, because now you're not so tired from having to just work so hard and just survive. And so you're having to have a little bit more bandwidth, and you're starting to look at it. And then when you first start showing affection, you might think, what if things get bad again? What if I need to, will I lose this? I mean, if I just said I love you, and hey, I care about you, and I start doing these things, and all of a sudden work gets tough again and I can't afford to anymore, will I do more damage? Will I have to pull away? They will feel a sense of loss. I can't maintain it. Why continue something? Why do something I can't continue? Or, same thing. You're starting to maybe hire people that clean your house, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm wasting money. This is money I didn't spend before. There are all these different thoughts that come because it feels like you're directly going against the previous rung you're working on. If you work on your belonging rung, it seems like it's compromising your security rung. If you work on your security rung, it will feel like it's compromising your physical rung, and so on and so forth. If you have a system going and you used to have a system, it feels like you may not be as adaptable. You're like, well, I used to not need this. If I go back, can I go back? If I now all of a sudden become reliant on a system and my life becomes easier, maybe it's better if I don't have a system so I can still be so adaptable, right? So the key thing we don't understand about wants is that what you want compromises your need, your previous wrong, or it seems to anyways.